Welcome to the Student Sector Spotlight podcast, brought to you by the Humber Outreach Programme.
Hi everybody watching. Back again with another one of our sector podcasts. So thanks for your continued support. Today I've got the fabulous Kirsty Clode here today, who is, I want to say founder, but let me know if that's the wrong wording, of WiME, which is Women into Manufacturing and Engineering, which is, I think the initiative is also taken with Greenport as well, and I'm sure you'll go into that a little bit more better than I've gone into there. But yeah, so we're going to be looking at how to get into the sector of manufacturing and engineering today, specifically, I guess, in the Humber region. So thanks, Kirsty, for joining me.
You're very welcome, Rachel. Nice to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I guess the first thing is just a little bit about yourself, really, and how you got into the industry, and a bit about your career, I guess.
Okay. Well, so I started out in the industry as a chemist. I loved science at school, science and maths. That was me. One of those geeky people that always, sort of looked at tests and worked out how you were going to pass the test. So I went to university, loved chemistry, did a PhD, and was trying to work out what did I want to do, because I actually didn't like staying in the lab all that much. And I decided to go and work in industry because I'd done some work experience throughout my life at university. I'd been going out getting work experience, and I'd worked for a company which probably doesn't exist really now, called ICI, which made paints and stuff. So it's the Dulux brand. And I worked there over a summer and thought, this is the sort of stuff I want to do. I work in industry with big chemical plants. So I found myself a job at BP at Saltend as a chemist, making acetic acid. So you'll probably not realise, but vinegar that you put on your chips, that's acetic acid. We make hundreds and hundreds of tons of it a day at Saltend. And I was the chemist that was given the job of making a better process to make acetic acid. So that's what I did for my first few years. And I spent 27 years working for BP, not just making acetic acid all the time, though. So I developed a new catalyst. There was a team of us working on it, and we went around the world, so America and South Korea and back to Hull, commissioning that new process. And then I worked a bit in health and safety, a bit in operations management, so learning how to run big chemical plants, so taking things from test tube size to hundreds of tons. So that was fabulous. And then I went to work in London for the global bit of BP. So I started at BP Chemicals and then worked for the big BP down in London, and then got a job roving around the world, and then got a job in Houston running the operations for the offshore pipelines and onshore pipelines in America. And then came back as the boss for the whole chemical site for BP. So I worked for BP all my career.
Wow. Big stuff then. That's exciting, and a bit of travel as well, which is really great. So did you do, with your degree then, you say you was doing some sort of part-time work while you was doing your degree? What was that in? And did you just do like a degree, or did you do a PhD? How did that work?
So I did my first lot of work experience when I was still at school, actually trying to work out what subject to take at university, or whether even to go to university. And I worked for British Home Stores, which is now defunct as well. I worked for like a logistics company, and then I worked for the lab at one of the local hospitals, and that was the bit where I suddenly realised that's what I like doing, is chemistry type stuff. So that's why I chose chemistry at university. And then at university I went and got a summer job working for ICI. And I was in the labs, but they had a big chemical plant outside. And I'm like, I want to go and work on one of those things. Yeah. So the reason I did my PhD is I'd worked out that companies like ICI, BP, all the big names, you got further up the chain in that organisation if you had a PhD as a chemist. So I didn't do a PhD to be an academic. I did it because I would join higher up the ladder in BP and I would get further.
I see. Tactical move.
Tactical. And that's something you got to think about, is how you're going to get to where you want to go, and what are the rules of the game in your industry. And each industry is different. So it's finding out, by spending time working in the summer with people who've done those jobs, I could work out, oh, okay, this is the next step I need to take.
Right, I see what you're saying. And I suppose we'll get into that as to whether you think that's still an important thing for maybe young people to be looking to do. But if you might be right in that it just totally depends on the specific sector that they go into and the job that they want. I guess it just depends, doesn't it?
It does, but I would say work experience, try to find out what you don't want to do is equally as important as finding out what you want to do. So I tried working in a shop and retail and working with people, and I like working with people, but retail wasn't what I wanted to do. And then I worked with this catering company that did the logistics of putting catering packs together. Logistics was interesting, but again, it wasn't what I wanted to do. As soon as I ended up in a lab, though, it's like, oh, this is the sort of stuff.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, fab. So then presumably, you know, after you sort of left BP, then decided to start WiME. So
yeah.
So that I can see how that transition happened. So what, for people listening, I guess you give us a bit of info on WiME and how people can find out about it, etc.
Well, WiME started back in 2016. I'd retired from BP and was thinking about what I want to do next. And they were building the blade factory in Hull for the Siemens blade factory for the wind turbine blades. So Siemens and Airco, an air conditioning company, were both struggling to get women to apply for their jobs. And I'd found the same thing in BP. We didn't always have as many women as we wanted. It's much better if you've got a diverse team, because you don't always go down the same, well, we've always done it this way. If you've got a diverse team with different ideas, you get better products. It's a nicer place to work.
Yeah.
So businesses were working that out, but they didn't quite know how to attract the girls to these jobs, because whenever you Googled manufacturing and for a picture, you got a bloke with a hard hat on.
Yeah, of course.
So they wanted to change that and they didn't know how to do it. So I joined the little team and we put on an event, but we did it slightly differently because we read some research with there's a company called WISE, the Women in Science and Engineering campaign, and they've done some research that said girls will naturally step back at a careers event if they're going to some stands. The boys will step forward and talk about engineering with the stand holders, but the girls will step back. So we ran our events that were girl only. So it was girls only coming to the events with their mums and dads if they wanted to. And we had women on the stands who did those jobs. So it wasn't someone saying you could be this, but they were an HR person. It was a welder or a design engineer or a fitter that did that job, and they were female and they were from around here. Yeah. So it makes a difference if you can see someone who's a bit like you and hear what their story is. And we brought along women, or we bring along now women that have done university route like me, which is what most teachers will probably tell you. But actually, lots of them have done apprenticeship routes, and lots have also just gone straight from school and started on the rungs and worked their way up and done qualifications at night, weekends. It's not easy doing that, but they've done it a different way because that's what suited them, or that was the opportunity that came available to them. So sometimes it's the cards you dealt, you know, time, where you live, what the opportunities are like. And actually, there's more apprenticeships now in manufacturing engineering, I think, than there were when I was at school.
Right.
So yeah, the stuff that's coming up now for the Humber opportunities are absolutely fantastic. And I don't think at the moment the news about what's happening in the Humber has really reached the students in schools and at university. Maybe universities have twigged to it. Schools, it's a big story to tell about all the decarbonisation of the Humber, but we tend to talk in a bit weird lingo as well when we're talking about it, and it doesn't easily translate. So yeah, we need to make a bit better effort on the story of telling us what these opportunities are, because if you want to go into manufacturing engineering, the Humber is the place to be.
Absolutely, it is. You're right. And so I think you've got one of your events in October, I think. Did I read that?
Yeah. We do 2 a year. So we do one on the North Bank, one on the South Bank. The North Bank one is in October, so that's October the 4th, in the Guildhall in Hull. And then we've got another one in Scunthorpe on the 21st of June at the Baths Hall. Awesome. So we do 2 a year.
And that's women specifically in these.
Yeah. So we run two parts of the event. One is during the day, the schools and colleges will come along, and then in the sort of late afternoon, 4:30ish, then the women, mature ladies, can come along, or the girls can come along with mum and dad or carer, and hear the same sort of stories and meet the same people.
Great. And presumably, is there a few different organisations that turn up, or is it specifically Greenport that are just there? No,
it'll be. Usually we have about 100 women in the hall. Awesome. It's quite noisy. So at the moment, we have 2 massive rooms, and they're full of companies. So companies like the companies that people will probably recognise. Most people will recognise Siemens Gamesa because they're building the blade factory and they put the blade in the middle of Hull. But the Siemens Mobility is going to be there. So they're building the trains in Gould, brand new factory, lots and lots of jobs. We'll have people like Orsted, the wind farm company, so they will be there. But we'll also have smaller companies like Source who do software. And I think it's important that when you're thinking about jobs, digital is a big deal. And people think that you have to be a software engineer to get into digital, and that's just not true. So we try and bring companies, so people like Ideal Heating that have got digital people in it, as well as people who build boilers, but now it's all the new stuff like the heat pumps for renewable energy. So there will be lots and lots of different companies that you might not have heard about. And it's really interesting to go along and hear the stories of the women that work there. So you'll find companies that you've never heard of and jobs you've never thought that you could do because you didn't know they existed. So Equinor are building a new hydrogen plant at Saltend, brand new to the UK. And most people won't know what Equinor is. They'll never heard of them. Massive Norwegian company that are going to bring pipelines and chemical plants to the Humber. And they're going to be on the North Bank and the South Bank. People like SSE Thermal. Probably nobody knows that we've got caverns in Aldborough that store natural gas at the moment, but they're going to be designed to store hydrogen. So in this new era of renewable energy, there's lots of companies that want more women to be part of them. And you probably don't know their names yet because they're not huge numbers of people that they're recruiting yet, but that's because they're still designing the plants. But in 2 years' time, they'll be recruiting.
Wow, that's good to know. It's just mad what's happening in the Humber. So much good stuff. I know that Marketing Humber, they have an event around October, don't they, with quite a lot of big organisations, and obviously with decarbonisation in the Humber. You can check those videos out online if anybody's interested. But I'll put the details to all of the WiME stuff at the bottom in the description of this video. So if anybody wants to access that, anybody listening, I think is it accessed via Greenport, Kirsty? If anybody's listening.
Yeah, I always type in women into manufacturing and engineering Hull, and it comes up with it.
There you are.
On it, there's a load of videos. So each of the companies in the past have done a video. So they will have people like Smith and Nephew telling you about jobs. You'll have Reckitt people telling you about jobs. You'll have SSE telling you about jobs, and Orsted. So they're really short, snappy videos of, and it's not just. So there's interesting ones where you will see girls that have done the university route. You'll see quite a few that have done apprenticeship, but you'll also see people who've come into the jobs in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
So there's a few videos there of people. So Joe from Siemens Gamesa is on there, and Katie from HETA. So Katie I think she did administration, but she always wanted to use Spanish. She got involved in the Green Power Trust, the electric car race around Hull. And she loved doing that. So she's now an apprentice with HETA. She's working out in one of the factories. So loves it. She's, why didn't I do this earlier? Wow, so there's lots of different videos that you can have a look at to say, it's never too late, and there's no one route that's right. You just got to work out what works for you.
Oh yeah, brilliant, fab. So going back to, I guess, the younger people that might be listening to this, who might be at school and thinking about maybe GCSEs or A levels, what do you think are the top ones for them to maybe be selecting in order to go into this industry? Or again, I guess it depends specifically what you're doing.
Depends what you're going to want to do. The normal route, everyone will tell you, is maths, physics, chemistry, biology. But there's lots of people who've done it a different way. So some people have done history and maths. Some people have done design and technology, because again, if you're doing more of a creative part of it, so if you're designing pieces of equipment, actually design and technology is quite good as well. If you're going into digital, then computer science, physics, that sort of stuff is really good. So I would say work out what sort of industry you want to get into and what is it you like doing. So if you don't like chemistry, then don't do chemistry, because you'll hate doing your qualification in it. But if you like design and you like, I think one of the key things though is you've got to be good at English and good at maths, because you've got to communicate. And basic maths is really important, whatever you do. So definitely don't drop the English and the maths. But choose something that you like. And I would have a look at those videos. So we've tried to get the women to talk about what did they like at school. So one girl liked geography. She's now a wind turbine technician. Now, how to translate geography to wind turbines? Well, she was keen on the environment, and she took that, but she was good at practical, and she liked climbing. So she's ended up climbing great big wind turbines in the North Sea. So again, you've got to work out what you like doing, and how does that take you into a job? And hopefully some of those videos would help you see the stories that they've done. So one girl liked fixing cars. Well, she now designs boilers for ideal heating. So it depends what you like doing as a hobby and what you like at school, and then see where that could take you.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I think from my end, obviously from a completely different sector and in marketing, when I look at your industry, which I don't know a lot about, you do think it's like you have to have exactly what you said, those specific GCSEs in order to progress. But with you saying there's so many different kind of jobs within that sector, that it just go with the GCSE and A levels that you love doing, and then you'll find a route into that. I guess that's a good way of.
You will, and you don't always end up. There's one girl, another girl, did geography. I think she actually did it at university as well, and she's ended up procurement. Yeah. So, but within our industry, so there are lots of jobs. You don't have to be, and people think, oh, you have to be geeky, you have to be top set in maths to do it. I was never top set in maths. You have to enjoy it because you'll be doing it for your job, but you don't have to be the geek that's always got the top, and you don't have to be the one that always passes the best in the exams. If you've got a real passion for something, you will be generally good enough at it. You don't have to be the best at it.
Good, cool, good to know. So I guess then from that, carrying on from A levels, I guess, you spoke a little, well, you mentioned apprenticeships. Is that still, I guess, if you're going into more your traditional manufacturing and engineering routes, is that still the best option in the Humber, or do you think, again, that depends on a degree or a PhD? Again, it depends on what you're doing.
I would find out what sort of job you want to do. So apprenticeships, you can do an apprenticeship in lab science now. So you don't have to go to university straight off. You go and get the job, and then the company pays for you to do the apprenticeship in lab science. So you can do it different ways, and different companies have different routes in. So Reckitt's are quite big into apprenticeships. So people like Ineos. So it depends what you want to do. And they have normal what I would class as normal apprenticeships, but then they also have degree apprenticeships where you can study, and it takes quite a long time to get your degree. But you can do that while you're still working. But I would go and explore it and talk to people. So go to lots of these open events. So people like what I used to know as Airco training down in the centre of Hull, they have open events. Hetter have open events. You can go and talk to them and say, what qualification will I get? What company could I work for? How would I get in? But I will also go and look on the websites of those companies. So find if you're really interested in renewables and decarbonisation, find the companies in the Humber, which is, most people think, well, how am I going to do that? You have to do a lot of scrolling around the websites, starting with the LEP website. They have this thing, the Humber cluster plan. So it'll tell you all the companies like Equinor and Ineos and Orsted and Phillips 66 and Prax. They will tell you all the names. You can come to our events because we will have all those companies here in our events. You can have a look on our website and you'll see the names of the companies. So I would find the companies that you're interested in and look at their websites. So if you want to get into transport, but it's more the electric transport, and you might think, well, there's nothing in our area. Well, there is, because Siemens Mobility are building the Piccadilly trains for the underground. They're building them in Goole, and they'll be recruiting lots of people. So the industry's here. It's you finding the companies that you like the look of.
And definitely with the events, and a great opportunity for people to come and have a chat face to face, and I guess that takes some of the time away from having to scroll a little bit. If you can go up and have proper chats,
it helps.
People.
If you can talk to a real person about what they've done. So if you can't, the events, we only run ours once a year. Well, once a year on the South Bank, once on the North Bank. But you can have a look at the videos and have a look at those. And I think have a look at things like Log On, Move On, and the equivalent one on the East Riding website. So they've got the Skills East Riding. And they always have roles for different jobs, and they will have the list of when the apprenticeships are coming up. They'll tell you when they're coming up, because it's not easy to keep an eye on your 20 or 30 websites and when are they opening their apprenticeships.
Log On, Move On, Links To and Links For You, I think, are some of them in the area. And for anyone listening, we have all of the well, we try and have most of the events that are coming up in the Humber on our website as well. So you can access not necessarily apprenticeships, but events like what Kirsty's saying, you can actually access them on our website as well.
And I would say the other thing to think about is, who do you know in your network? And if you're at school, you're thinking, well, I only know my friends at school. But actually your friends have got parents and carers that work. So if you're interested in, I don't know, going to work for a wind farm industry, but you don't know anything about it, if you ask around, I am sure that within 2 or 3 conversations, you will find someone who knows someone working for either Orsted or RWE or RES or any of the wind farm people, and they'll have a chat with you. You know, you go and have a drink with them, cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever, and ask them about their job. They will know someone. Siemens Gamesa, there must be people, because they employ thousands of people, so they will. You can go and chat to, and if they don't know the right person, they'll find you someone else. But it's a case of asking. Don't just sit there hoping that the idea is going to come to you.
Yes,
you got to go and talk to people, and I know that's not easy. You know, brokering a conversation when you don't know what you're really asking about, and you might think, well, I'll sound like an idiot. There's no stupid questions.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think people listening to this, anybody that's maybe at school and stuff, like, people are way more what's the word, ready to kind of speak to you and happy to talk, happy to give you time than you think. You're not pestering people, because I think the fact that, you know, anybody interested in this sector, and specifically with the growth in the Humber and seeing young people come in, people are more than happy to have chats with young people about their pathway and where they, you know, how they get into the career in the Humber, like, because it's a big proud thing in our area. So you know,
people are proud of their job. They just, if they do it every day, they don't always talk about it when they go home. So you don't realise what you know, your neighbours 2 doors down, maybe they work for a company that you're interested in. You probably don't even know who they work for. You just see them go out to work in the morning and come back, but who do they work for? So I would do a bit of digging, finding out who your neighbours work for, who your relatives work for.
Yeah, cool. So I guess the next question, which I think again will be dependent on specifically jobs, but in terms of applying for maybe apprenticeships or actual jobs, so you go down a university route and then you go to apply for a job in this sector, is it usually the case of CV, cover letter, interview, or is there any kind of testing that's involved? It
depends. It really does depend on the company. So small companies, if you take a company like Source, who does computer software, they will have a different completely different interview process to someone like Siemens Gamesa, which is a big firm. So I would, if you're interested in it, try and find out someone who works there so you can ask them. But I would always have your CV ready. But the key thing is, if you go to an interview, you've got to know what you're good at, because that's what they're going to ask you, is tell me something about yourself. You've got to be able to present very professionally who you are and what you're about. And why do you want to work for them? That's the key thing, is why would they hire you? So you've got to stand out from the crowd. So I would say, find out about the companies, and they'll probably tell you on their website what the interview process is. And if they don't, when they invite you to interview, ask them. So there's no problem with going back to the person who sent you the email saying, you know, they've sent you an email, you've got an interview Monday, 9 o'clock in this place. Ask them, do you need, what preparations do I need? Do I need to bring any of my design work with me, or whatever it is that you want? What sort of preparation should I do? And they should tell you. And I would look at the job advert. So if you've seen an advert for this and you've applied for it, there will be some really key stuff in that advert. They'll tell you what skills you need, what behaviours they expect. And I would look on their website. So some companies will have values. So they value people who turn up on time, or they value people that work in a team, or they value people who are, I don't know, must be something else. But anyway, some other values that they come up with. And make sure you can articulate an example. So if they put teamwork on their website, that they value that, if you've got an example of where you were part of a team and you netball team, football team, whatever, and you won a game or you designed something, whatever it was, then have that as your example, because that's what they'll want to know, is will you fit in? And you also want to know, will you fit in? Because you don't want to go and join a company that you're not going to enjoy being part of.
Absolutely. And I think that I remember back when I was, fresh from leaving school and applying for jobs, and you forget that that's a big part of it, is this, you're working out whether this is for you as well as whether this is for them. It's a two-way, it's a two-way street with interviews. And so don't be as nervous because, I think that it might be that you turn up and go, actually, this is not the right place for me, and that's fine as well. Yeah, brilliant. Cool. So yeah, I think my last question that I've just written down is I mean, you've given massive tips here anyway, but is there any other things you'd say as kind of last, your last words in this interview? Is any top tips for students, specifically for students, I guess?
There's a thing that I think it's Google are running called I Am Remarkable. So
right.
as a student, it's not always easy to say what you're good at. You can generally say what you're rubbish at. Oh, I'm not very good at this. But actually in an interview, you're telling them and selling to them how great you are. And if you cannot articulate that, they will try and drag it out of you because that's their job. But it's much better if you can say, look, I really want to join your company because I've read on your website you're doing blah, blah, blah. And I'm really good at, and then list out 3 things. And there's a little video on I Am Remarkable that Google have done. So it's hashtag I Am Remarkable. It's all over LinkedIn. It's all over the web. It's a little video that they play to help you work out the 3 things that you're good at. So if you work that out before you walk into the interview and have some examples of why you're good at those 3 things, you can bring that forward rather than getting stumped when they say, can you give me an example of something that you did that you're really proud of? If you come up with nothing, that's not good. But if you've got 2 or 3 things you can say, I'm proud of this.
Yeah.
That helps the interviewer because they have to base their choice of who's going to be successful on evidence that you tell them at the interview. And if you can't give them anything, that makes their job a whole lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's good. I didn't know about that either, so I'm going to check that out.
And the other thing I would say is if you want to join manufacturing and engineering, there's another website that I would go to. So it's run by the WISE campaign and it's called My Skills, My Life. And basically asks you about 15 or 16 questions. And it's not testing are you good at physics or maths. It's what are you like as a person.
Yeah.
By the time you answer those few questions, it then comes up with the top 3 words to describe you. So the more it's describing you as a person.
Yeah.
So are you an innovator? Do you like communicating? So they will come up with the top 3 things and then they will match you to 1,000 women in the UK who've also filled in those questions and they'll show you the jobs that they do. So if you're thinking, oh, I can't fit in because I don't like chemistry or whatever, actually you can fill in this and it doesn't ask you anything about chemistry or maths. It just asks you what you like as a person. Yeah. And then it tells you these are the sort of jobs that people like you do in the UK.
Oh, I like that. I'll put these again. So anybody watching the video, I'll put these at the bottom of the YouTube in link so that you can easily just access these and it's quick. But yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for your time. It's been.
You're welcome. And I would say big thing is don't sit there trying to work it out in your own little world. Try asking people. So come to our events, go to other people's events and talk to people about how did they get where they got to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.